helper method. So I'm going to, the way that I'm going to organize it is that I'm going to have all my helper methods at the end, at the bottom of the class. Like that's the whole point of TDD, that like we have different methods, that when we're reading the code, it has to be like just writing a book, that like you are reading English words that tells you what's happening, and then you have definitions for them and like the structures and everything at the bottom of the class. So you're just going to accept that it is going to roll many using the number of rounds and the number of pins. And if you want to know how it does it, then you can go to the bottom of the class and see the definition of that method. But we're just going to run it to make sure it's still working. It is still working. Okay, so let's get to the test. If I'm making any changes without explaining, I will get back to it and tell you what's going on. So how do I implement this? I want to implement a spare. So what was a spare? What would be, I mean, there are like different combinations, but what can I write here? Like, what would you write to test a spare? So you just have to make sure that the sum of the two numbers are adding up to 10. So I use my object. I call the method roll. So for example, for this one, I'm doing 5. Do the same thing for the second one. 5 and 5 is 10. And then just for making sure that the score function is working fine, I'm going to do another one, like say 3, to see if it adds up to the right amount. So we have our assert here. Assert equals. Actually, before that, let me do another one too. I'm going to call the roll many function and just to see if everything is working. So what should I put in my assert equal? So what happens here is that you do 5, another 5, so you do the spare, so you get your 10, and then you see how many you do in the next round, which is 3. You add it to 10 is 13, and also because you had a spare here, you add this again. So it would be 13 plus 3, 16. So I want to see if the value coming out of the score method is going to be equal to 16. Let's check this out. Is it going to be 16? So if it would be, we weren't doing TDD right. So let's see what the problem is. So it's giving us 13, but we wanted 16. So why is it 13? We still haven't considered that condition. All we have so far is that whatever pins is passed, I'm just going to add it to a score. I'm not considering the case that a player had a spare. So any suggestions for fixing this? First of all, I'm going to comment out this. So let's forget about this for now, and I'll get back to it. So I want to fix my roll method. So the first thing I do is to initialize an array with the size of 21. Is there anything else I should add here? So I'm having that array with 21 places. What would be the next logical step to take? Just the naming, as long as based on your judgment, you are being clear. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to call it current roll. And we start with 0. What next? What changes do we need to make? So the first thing I'm going to do, so let's see what's happening in the method. I'm adding the pins to the score, and then what I want, so I'm already considering that current roll. What I want to add is to add the pins to the next position. And if you're not completely understanding what's going on, that kind of is the plan. So don't worry about it. Like at the end, everything comes together. So what else? Do we need to make any other changes? So I need to make some changes in my score method too. First of all, I want to, let's have my score variable in here for now. Any suggestions for here? So there's going to be a for loop. What's going to go in there? It has to be less than the length of the rolls. So that's the total length. You want to go over all of the rolls that you get. And then, so what do we do here? We'll just add everything we have to the score. So we've made these changes to include the spare. But what is more important is to make sure that we're not messing up anything that we already had. So that's why I went here and commented out this one. So let's just say we don't have a case of a spare, and we're just checking for the gutter game and only doing one. this should still, like whatever change we make to our code, these tests should pass before we can get to a new test and accommodate for that. So let's run all the tests we have here. All right, so we didn't mess up anything. Our test is still passing, so that's good. That's good news. Okay, so I'm back here. What should I do now? Think of refactoring. How do we refactor this code? Why we're not getting an error message here? We're having two variables with the same name. The scope of this one is inside of the function. So if you have something here, it just ignores anything else that exists. Like if it's the same name, it only considers the variable that is within its scope. If not, then the other option is this one. All right, so we don't need this and this, because we're adding the pins to the rows, and then we're adding the row, whatever is in the rows, to our score. Now we're going to uncomment this test and run it again. So do you think it's going to pass or fail? All right, let's see. All right, so why did it fail? It's still doing the same thing. We're expecting 16, and it's returning 13. So what do we need to do now? Now we have a code that is more flexible. We can consider other conditions that would be added to it. But how do we make a change that all tests pass? So I'm going to start adding stuff. So you look at this one and the next one. So what I'm going to change here is I'm going to add the next value in rows as well. And then my index is going to jump 2 places because I've already considered the next one. So what happens here if I run the test? What would change with these changes that we made? I'm going to start from 0 and go up to the end of like all the rows that I had. And then I'm going to add them up and jump to the one after them. So if we go back here and run this test, what would be the return value of this method now? So first of all, again, just to follow TDD, we want to run this. We made a change, but let's make sure that the first two are running fine. Whenever we make a change, we want to make sure that the tests that we already have are working and are not messed up. All right.